What's up, Wisconsin? How's it going? Welcome to the second edition of Dairyland Talk. I am your host, Dylan Piccolo, joined by TJ Bain, as always. What's up, TJ? How's it going?
Going good. How you doing today?
Not too bad. Bucks get a split on their West Coast road trip, which took them to Portland for a loss. A dominating win over the Golden State Warriors, a close overtime loss to the Clippers, and a good win over the Denver Nuggets. You can, by the way, I should mention, you can always check our content out on Twitter. I am at DP_hoops. TJ's at top rated sports. Always check out our stuff and all the other great content we have at dairylandexpress.com. So, TJ, let's start breaking down these four games that we had talked about on our previous podcast that we said probably 3-1, 2-2 at the worst, and it ended up being 2-2 with two losses against teams that the Bucks we thought would probably beat. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, the one against the Trailblazers was pretty interesting. I think it was just a good game by CJ McCollum dropping 40 points. He had just a dominating third quarter. Giannis with 23 and 9 rebounds. Lopez had 22. So, I mean, it was a good, hard-fought game. It was just Trailblazers night.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of, CJ McCollum got extremely hot, and when a shooter gets that hot, hits 5 threes, 40 points, 4 steals, you're going to have nights like that, and it's going to be tough to bite, but the Bucks did not definitely play their best game that night. The whole starting lineup was negative in the plus-minus, and it was really, not the Bucks' night. They really didn't. They shot the ball pretty well from three, actually, 16 of 42 for 38%. So one of their better days on the year. But Portland was just, 17 of 43, 39%, just a little bit better, and shot 52% from the field. So you got to really look at that and say, all right, well, did they beat us down because they're better than us, or did they just have a good night? And they just had a good night. So, Bucks lost that one. They moved to 8-2. No big deal there. Had lost the third quarter by 10 points, kind of lost it there. No big deal there. Not really a concerning. I do have to say one thing I didn't see on looking at ESPN's power rankings today, and they said that was an embarrassing loss. Did you think that loss was embarrassing at all? I mean, they lost by 15 points, but for an 8-1 team on the road before they play Golden State, would you consider that embarrassing?
No, not at all. I mean, Portland just, they just outscored them, and the Bucks were just playing from behind most of the game. From a team that's been at the bottom 5 in 3-point attempts last season to coming into the game at like second in the NBA in 3-point tries at 41 per game. It was just an off night for the Bucks and just a good night for the Trailblazers. I wouldn't consider it an embarrassing loss at all.
Yeah, and I think, I'm actually concerned about that game. I don't really have any thoughts. It was kind of a blah game. There wasn't really too much going on. Eric Bledsoe had an awful night. 2 of 12, 1 of 7. That's like the worst you're going to see Eric Bledsoe. 5 points, 7 assists, 2 rebounds, and a minus 14 on 16% shooting from the field. So, I mean, if you're trying to figure out what's the floor for each of these guys, I think that's actually the floor of Eric Bledsoe. But Eric Bledsoe came back the 2 nights later on November 8th, and the Bucks went on to Oracle Arena on national TV and put a stomping on the 2-time defending NBA champion Golden State Warriors, albeit shorthand, with Draymond Green out with, I think it was a sprained toe. Man, it was, if you were a Bucks fan watching that game, that was probably one of the best. That was probably one of the best games you've ever watched because everything was going well. The Bucks did it. They won the second and third quarter by a combined total of 23 points. I mean, they really dominated in that second and third quarter stretch, turning the ball over. They had forced 18 turnovers. Kevin Durant had 6 turnovers. I mean, you can dominate the Warriors if you're turning them over like that and limiting the three. I mean, Steph Curry only took 4 threes. Kevin Durant took 2, and Klay Thompson took 2.
Yeah, I mean, it was, the Warriors, like you said, was without, Draymond Green. They lost Stephen Curry halfway through the third quarter, so they weren't fully charged. But the first two quarters, the Bucks showed them who the best team in the East was, and it's the Bucks right now.
Absolutely. I don't think there's any question that it's the Bucks. And focusing on this Warriors game, I mean, Giannis Antetokounmpo could do it absolutely whatever he wanted. He was getting to the rim, he was getting fouled, 10 made free throws, 11 free throw attempts, 9 rebounds, 24 points. I mean, 4 assists, 2 blocks, 2 steals. He contributes in every single part, every single category. And Giannis, the way he was sliding to the basket, I mean, against Kevin Durant, it made you think, all right, man, this guy can kind of move like Kevin Durant does. He's sly, but he's a lot stronger and he's powerful when he goes up with it. But I will say the top performer on that game for me was Eric Bledsoe after his pitiful game against Portland. He had 26 minutes. He shot 83% from the field. And then 26 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds. I mean, Eric Bledsoe was awesome that game. Shooting the ball, he hit some 2 timely threes, got to the rim, finished it. I mean, his physicality, being able to go up to the rim and finish with contact, is like no other. And it could be that he is the third star for the Milwaukee Bucks going forward.
Oh, absolutely. Only playing, like you said, 26 minutes for Giannis and Eric Bledsoe and putting up those stats. Giannis getting to the rim as easy as it was. Draymond Green was sitting on the sidelines just at all on what Giannis could do on the floor. And Eric Bledsoe, I mean, 10 of 12 from the field, 2 of 3 from the 3-point line. I mean, he made up for that other game, and his teammates took notice.
And you'll always see that, when the Bucks take down a team like Golden State and they beat them by this margin. I mean, to beat them by 23 points and to have all of your starters play less than 30 minutes, that is perfect. The Bucks are playing about 10 deep at this point, and you're seeing how it's paying dividends for the Bucks now, and it'll pay dividends for them when we get close to playoff time and the Bucks have fresh legs going into the postseason and hopefully home court advantage as well. I mean, also you need to kind of think about what this win against the Warriors did for the Bucks. There was, national people talking about the Bucks, how they're getting more recognition now that this is a 4-team race in the Eastern Conference between the Celtics, the Raptors, and as well as the 76ers, who just acquired Jimmy Butler, which we'll touch on in a little bit here. But, what do you think that this win against the Warriors did for the Bucks in terms of national attention? And do you think that the Bucks are going to be capable to stack wins like this? Because they went into Denver and won a tough game, and it appears that they're being able to go into these tough places and get out W's.
Yeah, I think the biggest advantage that the Bucks have right now is rebounding. I mean, they held a 46-38 rebound advantage over the Warriors. They're hitting their free throw shots. I mean, as a team, just against the Warriors, they went 19 times, made 15 of them. The team is disciplined. They're well coached. These are games that the Bucks can really stack on, like you were saying, and really make a push in the East, which has only gotten tougher, like you said, with the 76ers making that trade for Jimmy Butler. So it's going to be very intriguing for the rest of the season.
So after the Bucks defeated Golden State, they had another day off, and then they came back and they had a matinee contest against the Clippers in LA, where they actually lost in overtime by 128 to 126, giving them their third loss of the season. The Bucks, it was kind of a hot and cold game. The Bucks would do well one quarter, the Clippers the next, and kind of flip-flop like that. The Bucks were, down 9 after the first, got back, got the lead at half, and then, they just couldn't really get it back. It was kind of a weird game for the Bucks. Giannis had to play 41 minutes that night. Malcolm 37, Brook 37, Bledsoe 34, and Chris only 28. So what do you think about that Clippers game stood out to you? It's a 4 point, a 2 point loss is couple possessions. You can't, the Bucks played good enough to win. They just didn't. And we need to talk about what you saw from the team that they did well and what could they improve on based off of that game.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were just riding high still from that Warriors win. Still out in Cali, still enjoying the weather, and just I think they took a night off. Thinking, hey, these are the Clippers. It's going to be an easy win. And the Clippers came in the first quarter and just smacked them right in the mouth, dropping 33 on them. And it really woke up, the Bucks, because they dropped 40 in the second quarter. So it was just an off night for them. They can't take games off like this, like against teams like the Clippers, or the Hawks, or the bottom tier teams. They have to beat these teams on a nightly basis if they want to have a top seed in the East.
And I think we saw that problem with the Bucks last season. They would have a massive win last year. They would scrape one out with that ragtag group of players they had under Coach Jason Kidd that are apparently looking like some of them like gems under Mike Budenholzer. But, the Bucks would have a big win and then they would go lose in Charlotte the next night. I mean, they would go lose in Atlanta, like you had mentioned. You have to beat the teams that you have to beat, and that's like Golden State and Houston last year. They always beat the teams that they have to beat, and that's how they just accumulate these wins and get these unbelievable regular season records that set them fantastically up in the playoffs for home court and matchups and things of that nature. So, I think that it's concerning in that sense that you don't want to have kind of that what happened last year, but. I trust Mike Budenholzer that he's going to get his team out of this matchup. And we saw that in the next game against Denver, and we'll talk about that one next. But, I think that there's nothing really concerning because how much I trust Mike Budenholzer, and it's amazing how much I trust him compared to Jason Kidd. So it just kind of all fits in that kind of realm of trust. It kind of limits my concerns. But Giannis, I mean, 27 and 18, 5 of 11 from the free throw line. He's got to improve his free throw shooting for sure. He's definitely taken a step back from that. So, but anything massive standing out for you from the Clippers?
Well, I mean, it went into overtime. It was all based on Lou Williams hitting that layup at the very end to really give them the win. So, and shout out to Brook Lopez for hitting 6 3-pointers that game. I mean, the big man is shooting lights out from the 3-point.
Yeah, I mean, Brook is definitely hitting threes at a huge rate, and trust me, we'll go all into that in the Denver portion of this. But I think that it's a tough loss from the Bucks, and we had mentioned if they do beat Golden State, they will lose a game they probably should win, and I think this was it. Portland as well, obviously, but let's move on to the next game against Denver, which was Sunday at 8 p.m. Kind of a tough game to wake up for, with the altitude on a Sunday night after a 3-game week already on the West Coast, but the Bucks were playing and they got catapulted by Brook Lopez's 8 3-pointers on 13 attempts, 10 of 17 from the floor, 28 points for the big man in the middle, the $3.2 million signee Brook Lopez. And Brook was on fire. He was hitting some deep threes, 35 feet at least from the basket on consecutive possessions, just hitting it. His shoelace popped out. I mean, Brook Lopez, he tied an NBA record last night for most threes made in a game by a player 7 foot or taller. Lauri Markkanen had tied it last year, and Dirk Nowitzki has had the record. I believe he achieved it somewhere in the middle of the 2000s. So, I mean, Brook Lopez against Denver, unreal.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he tied his career high last game with 6 3-pointers, and then he just was like, well, I'll do better this game and hit 8. I mean, can you ask, much more from a big guy from, coming to the team, playing the center position, which was a weakness for the Bucks, and not only giving them defense, but giving them a 3-point shot, which they were lacking last season. This is the best signing this offseason the Bucks did.
And let's think about this too, because Brook Lopez, he can absolutely shoot whenever he wants, and if he misses it, he doesn't get bothered. He shoots it again, and it goes in the next time. That's the beauty of Budenholzer, man. He just wants the big guys to shoot, and if and they're gonna make them, he has confidence in them. Sees these guys play all the time, and he's like, well, you know what, Brook, if you want to go out there and if you think the team needs 13 threes from you to win the game, go ahead and do it, man. We're gonna stick behind you, and he rewarded him last night with 8 3-point makes in that game. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 22 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists, near triple-double yet again. Malcolm Brogdon, 20 points. Chris Middleton, 20 points. So the Bucks had 4 20-point scorers. I think Malcolm Brogdon has been one of the more intriguing players for the Bucks this season because, when the Bucks don't really have anything going on offensively, they get kind of in that stagnant Jason Kidd type offense. He really does a good job of driving the ball to the basket and either making it or forcing a pass, getting the team in their offense. I think Malcolm Brogdon has been one of the more surprising players this year of like what he can do for this team and helping them win.
Oh yeah, I mean Malcolm's over here shooting at 43% from the 3-point line. I mean that's impressive in itself. 14 points, 4 rebounds, three assists. I mean, I think those are all like career highs for him right now, and it's going to require the Bucks to sign him next season, which is going to be a very intriguing for the front office. But Malcolm Brogdon is playing outstanding this year, and same with Chris Middleton. I mean, it's the guard position for the Bucks are probably one of the best in the East, or underrated best in the East.
Yeah, and those, like you said, those are all 3 guys in the starting lineup that will be up for contract extensions this offseason or will be hitting the free agency if the Bucks cannot reach an agreement with them during that time. There wasn't a game against the Nuggets that was heavily influenced by the bench, but I'm also not concerned about that because they played, 4 of them in double figures. John Henson only played 7 just under 8 minutes, and it just didn't warrant them scoring that night. And that's okay. I mean, there's going to be nights where we need Pat, Ersan, Dante, Tony to score, but it just wasn't that time. So I'm not really concerned about how the game was played. It's and it's nice that we're not here talking about all the flaws, and it's giving us less of a headache on what's wrong with this Bucks team. They're playing great basketball. They're beating good teams. And you know what? They're showing that they're a threat to come out of the Eastern Conference and go to the NBA Finals. I mean, I don't think that it's absurd. I mean, the Bucks are right now on track to get in the echelon of a high 50s, near 60 wins. I mean, this team is fantastic, and barring any catastrophic injuries, and we know that they can happen. Karis LeVert just, broke his leg tonight, and obviously that's heartbreaking, and you pray for a guy like that, but we can't. The Bucks don't have that happen. The Bucks are in good shape going into the season, and playing Giannis, blowing out teams and having him play 20 minutes. I mean, yeah, sorry he's not going to play in the fourth quarter if you're at the game, but he'll be ready to go when it comes to playoff time, and the Bucks will be ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bucks have a very intriguing team. I think I liked what Coach Mike did, playing all the starters. So, a lot of minutes in the Nuggets game to, make like, hey guys, even though you guys played an overtime loss just last night, you guys are going to play this game and you guys are going to win this game, because that's what championship teams do. They correct what they did wrong. And I like what the culture that the coach has really brought to the team.
Yeah, I mean, and it gives confidence to them. Hey, guys, I know you guys just lost by 2. Kind of a fluky game. I trust you. Go get it done for us, and that's what they did. So now moving on to what the Bucks have looking ahead Wednesday, Friday, and Monday night as well when we'll be recording the podcast. The Bucks have the Grizzlies on Wednesday at home, all 3 games at home. The Grizzlies on Wednesday, the Bulls on Friday, and the Nuggets on Monday. as terms of the Grizzlies, always going to be a grind against them, just kind of the style that they've adopted. With Gasol, Mike Conley, Dylan Brooks, he just went down with an injury. So, I mean, obviously, they lose a scorer right there. But, the Grizzlies always pose a decent threat. I think the Bucks would be, Bucks can beat them, but the Grizzlies are, riding on a 2-game winning streak. As they play Utah right now, they're currently beating Utah, but they just beat the 76ers in overtime, and they beat the Nuggets. So those are 2 pretty good teams. So, if they win tonight, they'll be riding a 3-game winning streak coming into Milwaukee. 2 hot teams meeting at the Pfizer Forum that night. What do you think? I think Conley and Marc Gasol could pose some threats for the Bucks. You'll definitely see how Brook Lopez handles one of the better centers in the NBA that night. But anything you want to mention about the Grizzlies?
I mean, yeah, Grizzlies are just playing, normal ball like they always do. Just tough, grind, slow, a different type of style that the Bucks are used to. A lot of in and out, a lot of passing it to Marc Gasol, letting him work in the center. So it's going to require Brook Lopez to really, be on his defensive game. Giannis is really going to have to step up against this team. Memphis is one of those teams that are very underrated. They don't have a lot of superstars, but they have a lot of good players that could be a mismatch for the Bucks.
Yeah, I think, if you look at the Grizzlies like team stats right now, they're the last in the NBA in scoring, and they're first in the NBA in scoring defense. So, they're going to try to lock you down and try to limit you, but they're not going to put up a lot of points too. In the way the Bucks play offense, with so many different options at every avenue, I just don't see that the Grizzlies can stop all of them at this point. Grizzlies also, they don't shoot a lot of 2-pointers, and they force you to shoot a lot of 2-pointers. So we'll see how that turns out in terms of Wednesday night at Pfizer Forum against the Grizzlies. The next game is Friday night. Jabari Parker makes his regular season return to Milwaukee with a lot of negativity going towards him in terms of Bucks Twitter. He just right now isn't playing good defense. He's getting called out on social media for every poor mistake that he has, and it's frustrating to watch that. Obviously you don't want to have negative thoughts about Jabari Parker, but he just kind of isn't helping himself right now. Bulls are 4-9, can't play really any defense, don't really have any offensive versatility, especially with Lauri Markkanen out at this point. Zach LaVine's playing at a good level, but Jabari Parker is their leading scorer after that. So and he's only started 6 games. So, Wendell Carter has been nice, but I don't really see much of a threat from the Bulls. But I know the Bulls like to come up to Milwaukee, and I know they like to play they play a lot of basketball. But they're hurt. Chris Dunn's out, Markkanen's out, Bobby Portis is out, Valentine's out. So the Bulls are kind of just filling in gaps right now. And I don't really have any thoughts on the Bulls, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jabari Parker is going to try to come here and make a statement game, like, oh, look what you guys missed out. But if you notice how much fluid the Bucks are playing without him, we're not missing him at all. Jabari Parker found a home and with the Chicago Bulls, and he's not playing up to par as many people would think he should be. But I mean, hey, that's just how the NBA works. That's how the business side works. The person we're going to have to worry about is Zach LaVine. He's playing lights out, so he can catch fire any night, and drop a 40. So we just have to really be careful with him. But besides that, like you said, I mean, they're injured. They seem like they're starting to maybe try to start tanking to get a higher draft pick. But I mean, it should be 2 solid wins this week for the Bucks.
Yeah, I mean, after watching Zion Williamson and those Duke boys played, I'd probably be thinking too.
Yeah, right.
They're unreal. And then the Bucks will finish out our week, which ends on Monday when we record our podcast, with another contest against the Nuggets at home. The final time the Bucks will be playing the Nuggets this season. So if you want to go to that game, I would recommend it because the Nuggets are a fun team to watch. Despite the Bucks beating them, it's never going to be easy and never guaranteed for a game of that magnitude on a Monday night in Milwaukee. I think the Bucks did a lot of what I would say they need to do on Monday when they played them yesterday on Sunday. They just need to limit Nikola Jokic. I mean, Jokic did not have a very great game yesterday. He had good numbers. He had 20 points, 6 assists, 6 rebounds, nothing like a triple double that he had against the Bucks last year. So, limit him. Gary Harris, Jamal Murray didn't have really fantastic games, 15 and 14 apiece. If Paul Millsap wants to beat you, I mean, he hit 5 threes. I mean, Jokic hit 4 threes. So just limiting them. I think the Bucks are a better team than Denver. I think Denver is good. They have a lot of good pieces, but their bench necessarily isn't rounded out, and they rely a little too much on their guards. But, definitely going to be a tough game and another test for the Bucks to make sure, hey, that game wasn't a fluke and we got to defend our home turf, especially on our toughest game of the week. I don't want them to go, 2-0 in those first 2 games and then lose the second one. I mean, obviously you want to win every game, but, I think this is a winnable contest.
Yeah, I think if we could pull this off and the Bucks are sitting at 13-3, I think we'll be, at least the number 1 or number 2 seed in the East. The Nuggets, as long as we take care of Jamal Murray, we'll be all right. Like you're saying, Paul Millsap's going to have, a Paul Millsap type day. But I honestly think the Bucks are way better than the Nuggets at this point. The Nuggets are, like you said, rely heavily on their guards, and we have Giannis. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Giannis is playing, a big man, small forward. It's just insane how he's playing right now at such a MVP level. Giannis could have one of those games where he can drop 26, 9 rebounds, 8 assists, and be like, well, he kind of had an off night. That's how well he's playing.
Yeah, I don't think Giannis has had an A+ game yet this season. So he's definitely an MVP candidate already, and he has not played his best game. So that's kind of telling about how his season is going. Let's talk about some superlatives for this week. Who was your Milwaukee Bucks MVP through the 4-game road trip on the West Coast for the Milwaukee Bucks?
Ooh, I'm going to take Brook Lopez for going crazy from the 3-point line. Now that is my MVP for the week. 2-2 this week for the Bucks, but Brook Lopez showed why the Bucks went after him and signed him. And 8 3-pointers, 6 3-pointers. I mean, the big man's playing outstanding this season.
Yep, I think Brook Lopez is a great choice, but I'm going to have to go with Eric Bledsoe. Bledsoe did have his rough game against Portland, but has played good in the other 3, especially in the Bucks 134-111 victory over Golden State, where he had 26 points on 83% shooting from the field, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, a steal, plus 30 in the plus-minus rating. I mean, Eric Bledsoe was doing it all that night, and it really showed what the ceiling is for Eric Bledsoe on this Bucks team moving forward. I'm going to ask you next question, and it is going to be, what do you think the Bucks record will be after this next 3-game stretch?
Yeah, I think we'll win these 3. Be a nice, solid 13-3. The East is got a lot more competitive, like we were talking about with that Jimmy Butler trade. So every win's going to count, especially with the top 4 teams, with the Celtics, Raptors, Sixers, and the Bucks. I mean, it's going to be a grind. So I think we'll be 13-3 after these 3 games.
I think the Eastern Conference has become the more intriguing conference to talk about. I think Golden State's kind of solidified themselves as tops of the West, especially with Houston's struggles, with Carmelo Anthony and kind of missing Trevor Ariza and Luke Richard Mbamute. But I think 3-0 is definitely obtainable in this stretch. I wouldn't put it past the Bucks to lose it to the Nuggets at home. But I'm gonna say 3-0 too. I'm gonna put all my chips in, at least on this Bucks team, for as it stands right now. Who is your kind of unsung hero for the Bucks over this 4-game West Coast trip that they were just on?
I would, I think Malcolm Brogdon was doing, things that nobody ever really highlights on ESPN or talks about. He does the everyday, every player, stuff, the passing, the defensive, the setting screens, hitting clutch shots, hitting free throws. He's that type of player that you want on a team because he is the glue. So that's my unsung hero of the 4-game stretch.
I love that Malcolm Brogdon pick. Probably who I was going to go with. But I am going to go with Pat Connaughton. Pat Connaughton has churned out a nice little role on this team. Kind of the older version of what Dante DiVincenzo hopes to be for this Bucks team. But Pat Connaughton has really put it up on the score sheet, 2 double-figure games off the bench, obviously 15 against the Warriors where he was impressive. And I think Pat has done a nice job in this role. I mean, Pat and Brook Lopez are like $5 million on our salary cap. So the value you're getting out of those 2 guys is much more than the value you're getting out of your other 2 guys on the bench that are getting paid $20 million this season. Tony Snell, John Henson, excuse me, I must even throw in Matthew Dellavedova. So that's $30 million. You're getting way more, contributions from Pat Connaughton, I think, than you're getting from John Henson, Delly, and maybe Tony Snell combined. I mean, Tony Snell's not played terrible, but you kind of get what I'm saying. But I think we've touched on the games this week, the superlatives, what we think is going to happen. So I think that's going to finish it for this edition of Dairyland Talk. Thank you. I want to thank TJ for coming on. Check his stuff out at Top Rated Sports on Twitter, as well as his stuff out on Dairyland Express. You can check me out on Twitter at DP_hoops, as well as some of my stuff on Dairyland Express as well. We wanted you to also tune into our other great podcasts that we have coming out on our new series, Dairyland Talk, which is an Apple iTunes verified podcast, as well as you can find it on our website at Dairyland Talk or Dairyland Express. So for TJ Bain, I'm Dylan Piccolo. Thank you for listening to this edition of Dairyland Talk Bucks.